Hello everybody, my name is Simon Timpley from the International Food Safety and Quality Network. Welcome to edition 109 of the Food Safety Fridays webinar program. It's the final Food Safety Fridays of 2018. If you've been to some this year, tell us, have you enjoyed them? Give us a rating out of 10 in the sidebar. The good news is next year we've secured sponsorship again for the program, and next year we've got a full program, and over the holiday period now we're going to put that together and issue that to you in January. Lots of great speakers and new topics for 2019. And the organizations that make that possible are our kind sponsors, so I need to mention those. Trace Analytics, Metal Toledo, DMV GL Business Assurance, Safe Food 360, and AIB International. And today's topic actually is from Alfonso Cappuccino from AIB International, and the subject is how to select a GFSI scheme that is best for my business. So we'll be introducing Alfonso in a second. Just to tell you, the sidebar, type your comments, try and hang on to your questions till the end, or else they might get lost in the comment stream. But say hello, tell us where you're calling in from, get to know each other. It is being recorded today, and we always follow up to all people who register with an email with the recording, the slides, etc. So, right. Okay, at this point, I'd like to introduce you to Alfonso. Good morning, Alfonso.
Good morning and good afternoon.
Yeah, so where are you calling in from today, Alfonso?
Simon, I'm based in Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas.
It's the capital of the oil and gas of the U.S.
Right, and what's the weather like? Is it? I always think Houston, Texas is going to be blazing sunshine and.
Well, for sure, it's not going to be a white Christmas. Okay, we're expecting to be around 17 degrees Celsius in the afternoon, 63 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's not going to be snow, that's for sure.
No, it's quite pleasant. Okie dokie. Right. Well, if you want to get your slides up, Alfonso, I'll tell the audience what we've got coming up. Yeah, ladies and gents, as I've just mentioned, next year, I think we've got 26 Food Safety Fridays webinars, so 26 opportunities for free education, free certificate of attendance, so that will be great. So watch out for the emails early January. Once Alfonso's got his slides up, we'll take it away. Right, okay, I'll be back for the Q&A later. For now, I'll hand you over to Alfonso.
Thank you very much, Simon. And good morning and good afternoon. The presentation that I would like to share with you, it's a topic that I'm sure that all certification bodies will receive very, very common. So this is something that we receive at least like on a weekly basis. And it's relevant to explain that a certification body could not be able to give a better rating or better discussion of one standard compared to the other. We have to be impartial. But our responsibility with our customers should be to provide with a service that meets their needs and ask the correct questions to make sure that what we are able to offer will match their market requirements, the cultural requirements. So the presentation that we will have today basically is a compilation of different kind of questions and concerns from customers and future customers on how for them to be prepared, how for them to be aware of what could be the best standard to be chosen as part of their food safety program. These are some of the topics that I will just discuss with all of you. But please, if there is any additional one that you would like to get details, please send us your comments, and we will be more than glad to support you. But the main concern that we have is like, okay, what are the options that we may have, what it covers, how it compares one against to the other one, what are the main considerations, what I need to get in mind to make sure that I'm doing the correct thing, what could be the first things that I need to start doing to be prepared for this one, how much time it takes, and because this is also associated to how much it's going to cost, the process. Sorry about that. And the last one is, okay, what it could be the good criteria to select a certification body in this journey. Um, I would like to start with a general point, and is the topic discussing and making sure that we are very clear on why the companies will need to certify. Even that we already know that it's becoming a market requirement. So if food organizations would like to do business with retailers and large manufacturing sites, beside that, it's becoming very clear on the reasons why the company needs to certify. And one of the main ones is because your customers, either as the retailer or the manufacturing site, want to make sure that you as a manufacturer are prepared in a case of an emergency, of a crisis, that you will be able to know clearly how to handle a recall, how to make sure that you're following their specifications, you're doing the correct job on your hazard plans, manufacturing programs, prerequisites. So basically, it's a proof for all the different persons and organizations in the food chain to make sure that we are in the correct track and we are capable to provide a service that fulfill everybody's needs. So beside that in mind, the next part is to understand why is this becoming so general relevant. It's not only becoming as a one single region or a country or a company specific. This is a global requirement. And the main reason is because for a long time, there has been a global initiative called the GFSI, where the intention on all different stakeholders worldwide, and name it, between manufacturers, suppliers, accreditation bodies, certification bodies, government agencies, manufacturing sites, consultants. The intention is to make sure that all of us, we are in the same page on what is relevant, what needs to be implemented, what kind of actions we are expecting that any certification body should be capable to comply, as same that what are the expectations for manufacturing sites, and also how to make sure that one certificate should be applied and accepted worldwide, even that is the case that in some cases, like in Europe, still is very common that a company needs to certify with more than one standard. And that may be one of their different market requirements. But for sure, yes, this is something that is going to be for a long time. This is just growing, and it's expanding to countries under development. So we are just been seeing that this is a growing topic worldwide. Okay, so within the GFSI, in order to give the first answer on, okay, what are the standards that are available, inside the GFSI, it's clear that there are two main groups of food companies that we will need to refer to. That are primary producers or the manufacturing sites. For this presentation, we're going to focus on the manufacturer sites, and the reason is because it's time limited, but a similar type of assessment should be applied for primary producers. In this case, the intention is to know what are those ones, what they cover, where they are located, and relevant to know if the customers, if your buying companies accept those ones. So there is already a group of certification program owners that is called CPO, certification program owners, that are being recognized worldwide. From this group, some of them, as we say, are manufacturing oriented, and other ones are primary producers. That is why for this presentation, I will focus on the four of the main international recognized manufacturing programs that are available. Why is this one? Well, the reality is that even that GFSI is actually growing and they are adding new programs, and the one that I showed you in the slide before, they are growing regional programs like in Japan. The fact is that these four standards has been capable to provide multi-sector advantages. So it's not only food manufacturers, but also storage and distribution and packaging, retailers, and they are expanding the scopes within one single standard. So it's basically for the larger companies, manufacturers, retailers, to be aware of these options, and they are capable to understand that there could be multiple sectors, multiple opportunities within their supplier chain. But these are the four main ones that may have the most priority of the certificates worldwide. Okay, with this slide, I have the intention to give you an idea what are those scopes and how they compare one against the other based on the possibilities on which one may fit my needs as an organization. So these are the 4 standards that I explained you, the BRC, IFS, SQF, and FSSC. And each one of them, it's not only one standard. They may have different opportunities, different kind of scopes within their different multi-standard availabilities. So for example, there will be a standard applicable for companies that manufacture food products. There may be a standard for organizations that manufacture packaging materials, storage and distribution, brokers' requirements, and also for the retailers. Now, as you could be able to see, these standards, not in all cases, will cover all the different sections of the food chain. So that is something that they may be growing in the future. But the reality is that the 4 of them already cover 3 of the most important parts of the food chain. That is the food manufacturers, the packaging materials, and also storage and distribution requirements. Brokers and retailers, it's a growing sector, but brokers is something that we are expecting to see an increase in the next 2 to 3 years. Retailers is still an ongoing, but I will believe that between food, packaging, and distribution, it will be covered most of the company requirements worldwide. The other section that are relevant to consider is, okay, within the standards, what are the things that needs to be included and how they compare ones against the other ones? So these 4 standards, irrespectively they are food, packaging, or distribution, they may have the possibility to include 2 main topics that we call the food safety requirements and the quality requirements. So the GFSI requires that at least the organization be capable to demonstrate controls over food safety. While in other cases, the market requirements may be on additional to quality, food safety, I also need that you demonstrate that you have proper controls over quality attributes. And quality attributes could be, for example, the check of weight of the products. So if weight is not a food safety concern, it's actually a regulatory or is actually another type of parameters. So depending on the standards, there will be what kind of requirements or specifications you will need to cover. So here we have one of the main first difference between standards. Well, in the case of the BRC and IFS, both of them have integrated food safety and quality. And there's no way that you could segregate or differentiate food safety from quality because all of those are in the same standard. There are other 2 standards like the SQF or the FSSC, where it's clearly possible for the companies to differentiate between what are the food safety requirements that may be the GFSI basic topic and what may be the additional things that we may need to do to fulfill quality requirements. So at this respect, one of the first things that you will need to consider as a company is, okay, what is the scope of the that you need to cover by your company requirements and by your customers? If it's only food safety, or they are also asking you to control quality attributes. So this may be the first possibility. Well, in the main 2 first standards, BRC and IFS, as I explained, it's not possible to differentiate or segregate as the one certificate cover both. In the case of SQF and FSSC, actually, yes, the company may be able to say, I only want to certify for the food safety portion, or I would like to certify my food safety portion plus my quality requirements. So this is one of the first things that the company will need to bear in mind on what is the scope and the topics that they will need to have in mind. Well, in order just to make sure that I cover in other kind of organization additional to food, there are other standards, once again, BRC, IFS, SQF, and FSSC, when they are discussing on packaging and storage and distribution. This is also a relevant topic because if the organizations manufacture packaging or they have distribution of non-food products, one of the requirements that they have is, okay, if I certify, I will be able to cover all my customers' needs. And when I say customers, maybe food manufacturing, food-related business, or also could be personal care or other type of organizations. The reality is that if you certify for SQF or FSSC 22000 in packaging or distribution, the scope of the services only covers food products. Well, in the case of the BRC and IFS, the certification will be able to be demonstrate that you cover the requirements of the food products associated and also non-food product associated. So if a company, for example, produce bottles for beverage, but also for shampoo or lotion, then after their concern may be on have a certification that may cover both customer needs. And in those cases, then after BRC or IFS may be the correct one because of scope on this food and non-food product related. So this is one, again, is additional to the food safety and quality. Also, the recommendation is to understand is if you're only cover food product related or also maybe non-food. That could be the second level of differentiation in your selection process. One other of the requirement that we usually care about or we receive question is, okay, which one is the biggest one? I would like to certify with the biggest or with a well-known or the most recognized. So actually, as I explained, a certification body, we should not be able to select one against the other, but we may be able to provide information to our customers for them to take the decision. So one of the most common question is, okay, who is the bigger, where they are located, what are the markets, which one should better fit my needs and my market where I'm located. So the intention of this slide is to give you a picture on, in a global basis, considering 78,000 certificates worldwide, what is the market share between the different standards? And at this moment, I'm not having a differentiation between food, storage, and distribution or packaging. It's basically general numbers. So the certification bodies, certification standard owners provide details on the number of certificates in an annual basis. Now, it's a reality that as they change their databases and they have a new systems, they struggle to keep track on the number of certificates that are available. So when we select and we try to provide information like this one to our customers, it's possible that the numbers at certain moment not be accurate, and not because I'm just using the information that is available, and in some cases, it may not be updated by the standard owner. So how it looks like, still BRC, it's the largest standard out there. It's basically worldwide, it's recognized, it's in all different regions. After BRC, the two main ones at this moment is the IFS, that is very European central related, even that is growing in the US, much more in the packaging and the logistic section. But also, if you see FSSC, that is like an ISO 22000 basic standard, it's one of the faster growth standards worldwide. So we are able to see that 25% has been growing very fast in the last years. So it's something that we see that it's a growing standard, but it's very better seen and apply it in the developing markets. Latin America, we see it very common. And Asia also we see a very common standard, but mostly we see FSSC in a very large organizations, and I will explain you later on why is that situation. And the last option is an SQF. SQF in North America, it's growing very fast, and it's a very well seen standard. The growing market also has been seen very fast in the last 2 years. What is the difficulty is that SQF is not well positioned in Europe, so it's very hard to find auditors and companies over there or retailers that are well known about the standard. But if, for example, in Australia, in Japan, we see that SQF, it's a very well seen and used standard. So this is a little bit a picture on how they are, how much standards they may have, and what is the position in the market. Now, with these basic topics that I have been explaining, now let me start having specific considerations for you based on what our customers request us in a common way. So some of the things that we need to bear in mind to understand what is the better standard that fits your needs. I think that in the best of the cases always is download the standard, access the standard, review it, and make a good check to verify if what you're doing and what the standard requires is a good match, the structure of the requirements, or you may need to look for something different. But let me share with you some of the main topics that are expected for you to analyze in a way to determine which one is a better standard. So one of the things that you need to look on is, okay, what are your customer requirements and expectations? If they have chosen a standard, or they see that some standards are better positioned for what they do on their markets than other ones. Also, what is your market objective? Are you planning to export to certain regions? So you may be able to find a good standard in your local market, but if you're going to export to other ones, what are the expectations over there? Are they going to accept the standard that you have in such markets, or you may need to have two standards to cover such requirements? What is the company culture? Once that you review and read a document, you will find out that some standards better matches what your company do in the way that they manage their business than other ones. And this is maybe associated to the flexibility of the requirements on, or how they allowed you to have interpretation over the different topics. The other one is some standards develop more requirements, or they have a better market requirements than other ones. So some of the standards may be capable to find answers for the specific markets, and they may ask you to certify within, with a possibility to save some time by doing additional topics in the requirements. There may be other customers or certain food retailers or food service companies that they may prefer one against the other, but also they may ask you to do additional requirements to that GFSI standard. So in those cases, it's better to understand what is the structure of the standard and how much you will need to work additional in order to fulfill your customer additional needs. And also to understand what is the scope of the services, as I say, food against the non-food products, and also if they are looking for quality against food safety requirements. So now let's analyze some of these ones a little bit more on details. But maybe the first part for you to understand how a GFSI standard compare one against the other, it's relevant for you to bear in mind that irrespectively of the document, of the different standard options, you're going to be facing three main topics in all the cases. So theirs will be, irrespective of how the structure has been, many chapters and how many pages, you will see that there will be three main topics that you will need to cover as an organization. And those are associated to your food safety plan. Now, HACCP, now called in the US FSMA requirements, is starting to change the name. So that's why I called it HACCP, or food safety for the United States. Now, there are companies that manufacture packaging that then after they may not have HACCP, but they are still expecting them to implement a food safety or a safety plan for their products. So it doesn't matter if it's food producers, distribution, or packaging. Still, we are expecting that the organization should be capable to demonstrate how they perform their risk assessment for raw materials and processes, and how they correlate with the actions in their system to mitigate any potential contamination. So HACCP will be something that you will be able to see in all standards. The second portion of the requirement is something that is usually called as general management system requirements. If you allow me to say it, those are basically sort of things that your organization may not do as part of their core business. So if you're a bakery, for example, this is not going to be associated on how do you mix your batter, oven your products, do the QA checks and distribution. There will be the additional set of topics or requirements that are expected as any company to make sure that the system is working properly and they are taking action as needed. Some of these general management system requirements may be associated on, well, management will have to do a review from time to time. If you create documents, you will have to be able to demonstrate that you're using the update version and that people are capable to access those ones, that you're capable to control the number of records that you generate as part of the process, that you have a food safety plan, a food fraud plan. How do you control deficiencies in your system? So that means how do you take actions over major problems, or how the company act and react in the case of any potential crisis. So all of those things, as you imagine, those are not part of your core business, but those are some of the things that are expected that any organization should be capable to demonstrate as part of their programs. And then after, you will see that all the standard has a set of prerequisite programs. those prerequisite programs, and that's the beauty of this process, is those prerequisite programs may be common for all the different stages of the process, like food manufacturing, packaging, distribution. But depending on the scope of the sector of the certification, the requirements for each one of them may be adjusted based on the risk associated. So for example, you may be able to have a pest control program for any of those three different parts of the food chain, but usually it's going to be much more on deep and specific in the case of food manufacturer. That may be the case of packaging. And there may be an additional other set of specific prerequisite programs that may apply for certain markets that may not apply to the other ones. Like, for example, chemical migration in a packaging material, that becomes a prerequisite program that you will not be able to see it in food manufacturing or in the case of a storage and distribution. So once again, it's bear in mind that you will have to be able to demonstrate compliance and take actions over HACCP, General Management System requirements, and the prerequisite programs that are applied and applicable to your part of the food chain. Now, as I explained it, it's all of those requirements, management system, HACCP, and prerequisites, there will be set in a different structure depending on the standards. So it's possible that they may have 18 sections or 4 sections or 3 sections. It doesn't matter. But at the end, you will have to demonstrate compliance with all of those ones. Now, if we compare those topics against the 4 standards that we have been discussing, there is certain thing that you have to bear in mind. And in no way I would like to say that one is better than the other one. It's only that it's the nature of the standard. So for example, is some of the standards, if you go from the orange line, some of the standards are much more less prescriptive than the other ones. So what this basically means, some standard like the BRC, when you read it, it will be a very detail-oriented that tell you almost line by line what the company needs to do to be in compliance with the requirements. So that level of detail, it's something that is being very positive for organizations that do not want to reinvent the wheel. They would like to follow requirements. They want to know exactly what the auditor is going to ask, what they need to commit, and how they need to demonstrate it. So if your requirement is to be very clear on those, be very clear for your team on what is expected, what needs to be done, how much is going to be the investment, etc. Then after, you will need to start working as a first option, for example, with BRC or SQF, and later after for IFS. And FSSC will be the less prescriptive of the standards. So in some of the cases, the problem is the FSSC is so generic that it's very hard for small companies to understand what they need to do to demonstrate compliance with it. So this is the second problem. If you see it in the opposite way, as the standards are less prescriptive or less clear, if I can say it that way, then after there will be additional set of interpretation rules that you will need to have in mind to make sure that you're applying the rules in the correct way. So in the case of FSSC, as this is the most flexible of the standards, this is why the largest organizations usually like this one, because allow them to apply the programs in the way that they already have it in place for years. They like it. But if you find out there is a very small company that do not have a food safety program, they don't know how to start, what are the minimum things that they need to do, and they need a lot of support, FSSC may lose them in that translation because do not give the details of what needs to be done. So in the case of a small company, that's why usually BRC, it's a very good option. Very large companies, FSSC preferred as an option. And in the meantime, you see it, IFS and SQF moving around those terms. But that is something that I can let you bear in mind is some standards are very generic. You will need to have a lot more of interpretation. Some standards are very clear. And in some cases, that is a concern from the companies because they are so clear and specific that in some cases they may not like to do it that way. But you have to be in consideration that that's the way that the standard asks you to implement it. Now, there are other topics that are relevant to consider in this process. So, for example, if the organizations pass the audit, now the question is how much time they will have to implement their corrective actions. So in some of the standards, like for example, BRC and SQF, the requirement states that from the end of the audit, they should be capable to demonstrate their corrective actions around in the 30 days time frame. So it could be 32 days, a little bit more, but basically you're talking about a 30 days time window. Well, in the case of IFS and FSSC, the things are different. So now, in the case of IFS, the company needs to provide an action plan within in a short term. Usually we expect it to be done within 30 days, but give you up to 6 weeks. But we are expecting that the company demonstrate compliance with their action plans by the time of the next audit. So that means the company in IFS will have 1 year to implement their action programs. While in the case of FSSC with the new requirements, we are expecting that the company provide in a short term their action plans, but they should be capable to demonstrate that they implement their action programs within 90 days. What is this relevant? Well, I will say that because the company know their problems, their infrastructure issues. So if they know that they have several problems that they may be identified during a certification audit, that's something that they need to be aware that if those situations are being raised as a nonconformity, they will have a short time window to fix some of those ones, while in the other standards, they are capable to better prepare their capital project or their investments in order to be able to implement it and demonstrate compliance in a much more longer way, like a 90 days or 360 days. So this is something that is relevant to know for the companies on how fast I will need to take actions, how fast I may need to take some investments for us to demonstrate compliance with the program. Although the consideration is how frequent the organizations will have to certify once that they pass the audit. Okay, so relevant topic. If the organization receive major deviations, something that do not allow them to continue with the process, every standard will have a no-go section that basically say, we will not be able to continue until you fix these ones. And in most of the cases, that's something that the auditor will need to do a follow-up in a short term to verify that those actions has been properly implemented. But let's say that the organization already passed that no-go section. They are able to certify. Now, based on the score, the organizations will be able to have different possibilities. So in the case of the BRC or the SQF, based on the score, the organization will have to be able to receive their audits in the case of a low score in 6 months, and in the case of the better score in a 12 months time frame. Same thing like with SQF. While in the case of the IFS and FSSC, it doesn't matter if it's a low score. If they pass the audit, in both cases, they will have to do an annual recertification or an annual audit. Let me say that way. It will be an annual audit. So in that case, they know by default that for their investments and when they budget for certifications, it's only a need to do once per year, they pass it. While in the other ones, there may be a surprise that with a low score, they will need to do audits in a 6 months time frame. So this is also another consideration on budgeting from their side. Okay, other of the requirements that I receive very frequent from the companies is, hey, are you be so kind to send me a copy of the standard? I would like to read it before I get access to. So this is something that I would like to share here, that depending on each one of these, there are public information. There will be things that you may be capable to do by yourself, where there will be a cost, or in some cases may not be a cost. And that's the way that you may be able to prepare better and the way that you select the standard. So if you see it this way, from the 4 standards, I will give you 3 different topics. If the standard is for free, that you may be able to go as you finish this presentation and download it from each one of the standards. If there are interpretation guidance that are available to understand exactly how to apply, what the auditors would like to see, what are the things that you will need to complete. And also there's an available checklist that you may be able to use it to perform your internal audits or do a gap assessment. So in the case of the BRC, most of the information it's available. So you may be able to download the standard for free, but you will need to pay to access the interpretation. Now with the BRC standards, once that you pay your annual fees, you may be able to access to the source of those documents, where you may be able to get access to the interpretation guides, plus other documents. And I will say that BRC has the largest majority and the largest amount of additional support documents that may be relevant for small, medium companies to understand what are the level of expectations, program, and how to improve their system. IFS has also a free standard that you may be able to download. There's not necessarily an interpretation guide, but there are additional documents that may help your organizations to get an idea on what is the level of detail that they need to be aware on and apply it. And also there are certain rules inside the IFS webpage that may be available for the company to know is what are the expectations from the auditors, what they're going to ask me, what they would like to see for me to be in compliance while I'm implementing my system. SQF, it's also a very good resource where you may be able to access the standard for free, interpretation guidance, and the checklist. And in the case also to mention BRC, IFS, and SQF, there are multiple languages where you may be able to access information. I believe that in BRC there are more languages than the other ones, but still there is a global ones, and you might be able to access for English, Spanish, Italian, French, and I think that Chinese for most of them. And there also could be in other languages for the rest of the standards. In this case, FSSC is one of the most difficult standards for the organizations to work with, because in FSSC, you will need to purchase, and there is a fee to access to the main standard, that is the ISO 22000 and the ISO 22002, that is the prerequisite process. Then after, you may be able to access the FSSC webpage, where you may be able to access for free some of the documents that are additional to those standards. So in those cases, even that if you open the FSSC webpage, you may be able to download part of it. It's not going to be the total things. You will need to still purchase additional documents in your system, and you will need to consider the cost of the standards for you to be able to compare the cost for the certification with each one of them. There's no specific interpretation guidance, so they may have a way to compare when they move from section or from standard 4 to 4.1, or when they move from 4.1 to 5. There will be a way to compare some of those changes, but it's not necessarily interpretation guidance. It's a little bit of like a map to understand what are the main changes from the past to the new ones. And as well, there's no checklist that you may be able to use. And the main reason is FSSC is a much more interpretation standard based, and it's not like it's very simplistic to apply a checklist. So even with our customers, when they request an FSSC checklist, it's very hard because it's not checklist or line by line based. It's more like a process oriented, and it takes time to explain the companies on the difference on those ones. Now, other topics to consider is at the very end, the company's question is, okay, if I pass or fail, are my customer going to accept my standard? Are they going to accept my report? What my customer may request? Do they want a better score than the other ones? Are they going to ask me to review my audit? So this is something relevant for many companies' struggles. So let me give you a different perspective. Some of the standards, like the IFS and SQF, they provide the result in a percentage basis. So they may tell you you are in 97% of compliance or 87% of the compliance. BRC will give you by letters. So from the 2 A's, B's, C's, D's, or E's. And each one of those letters, A being the best, E's being that you're failing the audit, or you're very near to fail the audit. So the letters will give you an idea. And some standards, like the FSSC, do not have a score, or they don't have a way to compare. So basically, is you pass? Okay, don't ask you pass with a high rate or low rate. At the very end, you pass, and that's the relevant section. So what is the problem is that some customers, and I may say some retailers, some food service companies, based on this, they may have a specific requirements for the company. So they may tell you, well, if you want to be my supplier, I'm expecting that you have at least, for example, high rate in IFS, or I'm expecting you to have at least a good score in SQF. And in some cases, they say, well, in the case of FSSC, because there's no score, I just need you to demonstrate that you passed the audit. So that is something that is relevant for you to work around with your customers and with your markets to understand what may be their needs, and also is how you may be able to compare the result of your audits. I hate it, but I know that the multi-site companies always compare between sites. So if you would like to compare a company with FSSC, it's going to be hard because it may be only based on the number of nonconformities. But with the rest of the standards, they will be able to compare results by percentage of compliance. So that is something that you might need to bear in mind in your program. Okay, other things that are relevant to understand is how to access to the information, how the customers may know if I am certified. So what happened is BRC, SQF, and FSSC may have a public available database where you may be able to share to your customers that you're being certified, and they may disclose some information like when do you certify, what is your address, do you pass or fail with your certification body. So the information is getting much more public available. While still in some standards, like in IFS, that information is not. So if you are still asking if your supplier is being certified with IFS, the certificate is valid or not, it's very complicated to know it because there's no way that we may be able to access IFS, or you may be able to verify if the certificate is valid or it's a fraud compared to the other standards. So usually BRC, SQF, and FSSC provide you a better way to be able to demonstrate to your customers that you're being certified and you fulfill their needs. Other relevant topic to consider is that this is growing between if I have to do my audits announced or unannounced. What are the options? How frequent? If I need it or not? So the reality is that every standard is coming to a possibility to do an announced or unannounced audit. Okay, so there is something that they tell you how to do it. Some standards like the SQF or FSSC, they have a clear boundary that say you will have to go through an unannounced audit at least once every 3 years. There may be different criteria to determine how do you block days, or what year will be the one for certification, who select the year. But at the very end, SQF and FSSC have very clear rules. BRC is still allowing the companies to select if they want it announced or unannounced. Same thing like with IFS. It's basically company decision to determine how they want it. But in the realities that we have been seeing that in some markets, this is most becoming as a customer market-driven topic on, I don't know you want it, but I need that you need to go through your certification process with an unannounced audit. Otherwise, we may not be valid your certificate. So that's something that you will need to discuss with your customers on what is the preference, what will be the requirement, or is it up to you to select announced or an unannounced audit option. So once that you have all of those details, usually the next question is, okay, where I start, how I need to start building this, how to start preparing my team. And as I explained, I think that the best thing that you could do is start downloading each one of the different standards, compare the structure, the requirement, the level of detail, the availability of interpretation requirements. Talk with your customers. Let's find out what they could be able to share with you, provide information, details on their needs and expectations. And select a certification body. Talk with the certification body that they will be able also to give you some updates or details like the one that I am providing you. But also it's relevant to let you know that usually certification body worldwide, and I think that I may be able to speak on behalf of many of my colleagues, is that we plan the audits at least 3 months in advance. So if a company called me today and they ask an audit for January the 2nd, we will struggle. I mean, all of us will struggle to find resources because we schedule auditors well in advance. So my best advice is plan on doing the selection, planning your audit at least 3 months in advance to make sure that you will be able to have an available auditor at your facility on the time that you need it. Now, how long is going to take the audit? Every standard has a way to determine that information that is public available, so you will be able to access and do your math. But mostly in all the cases, they are asking you the number of HACCP plans, the number of employees, and the size of the facility. Other standards, mostly in storage and distribution and packaging, they may give you a guidance on, well, the minimum is 1 day, but you may be able to increase it based on the size, complexity, type of products. But it may be at least 1 day audit on site. So every certification body may have certain criteria for small sites, storage and distribution, packaging, but the most majority for food organizations is that there is available information on how to quantify that formula. The only details that is not public available, I will say that is FSSE. It's they may not be inside their web page. That is something that you may be able to discuss with a certification body on how is that determination between hazard plans, number of employees and sites may play in order to determine how long should be. All certification bodies should use the same table. So we're expecting that you should have the same quote with the same amount of time for the different certification bodies. There may be other considerations, but we should be using the same database. And in the case of FSS, IFS, there are other criteria, other elements like technologies, type of products, but also it's public available, that information. And how much time it will take? As I say, I mean, it's a calculation table. Something relevant for you to understand is IFS and BRC is like basically one single stop process. So the auditor will do in one visit all what they need to evaluate if your system is in compliance. So in those cases, you will need to make sure that you are budgeting for the cost on one single visit. While in the case of SQF and FSSE, we are expecting that the organizations budget and consider that they're like a two-step process. They need to do a desktop audit that basically review that your programs and procedures are in place. And then after, we will need to complete a facility audit. And that's basically verify compliance with your programs. In SQF, it's possible to do the desktop audit remotely. But in the case of FSSE, you will have to do it on-site. So that basically means you will need to budget travel time from your certification body in two different occasions. And as I explained, if you have a no-go step, that basically means a major nonconformity, you will need to do a follow-up before you're being able to certify. So that's something that I'm sure that not many companies budget for a follow-up, but that's something that is relevant because in most of the cases, it needs to be done within 30 days, and the auditor needs to fly usually back to the company to verify that the action has been properly implemented. Where to start? I would say that the best thing is conduct a gap assessment. Download the checklist from the company, do an evaluation internally between what do you have, what are you doing, what the standard requires, identify where those gaps, take actions over those ones. Please make sure that you have a management review, perform an internal audit completed for all the requirements at least once before the certification. And usually we are expecting that the company will have at least 3 months of continuous implementation before they will be able to select, being able to complete a certification process. If you still believe that you're not able to do a gap assessment internally with your own team or internal audit, you may be able to select with your certification body or with a consultant. They could be able to do an external pre-assessment, and they will be able to give you an idea on how ready you are and where may be the gaps. But my best intention for you is complete a gap assessment, take as many corrective actions, and make sure that your management commitment is well aware on how the things are going. And some of the things that you might need to bear in mind on the selection of a certification body, there are multiple criteria that you will need to have in mind. So for example, is how well my certification body is aware in my market, how much experience they have in the food sector. Find out if your certification body will have available local auditors, and in some cases like IFS, they have to be approved for specific languages. So it's not only a matter to fly somebody from the UK to Italy, they also need to have the possibility to have the correct language for your company. Check which one of those are being approved by your customers. There are certain retailers that they accept GFSI, but they only accept a specific set of certification bodies. So that may limit the list of whom you may be able to access and maybe be able to collect. Do your investigation and check the performance of the certification bodies. Like IFS will have a rating system, and they evaluate performance of certification bodies on how well they perform, how well they do their audits on time, qualify their auditors, complete the fulfilled requirements. So that may be able to give you an idea on who are better prepared than the other ones. And in some cases, some certification bodies has been allowed by specific markets to complete additional documents that some of those other ones may not be, as I explained you. Some companies have a specific certification body selected, and they believe that those are the ones that provide better service than the other ones. So they may accept any GFSI standard, but they may select a specific certification body. They could be a pool of maybe 5, 6 to a pool of 2 or 3. And finally, is how we may be able to help you. I mean, AIB certification, we are able to provide services. We have auditors worldwide, offices in Europe, in Asia, in Australia, in Latin America, in North America, and we may be able to provide you certification services for the IFS standards, SQF, BRC, FSSC, for all of those ones that are the food manufacturer, storage and distribution, and in the case of packaging, but also we do logistic activities and retail. And we may be able to do pre-assessment or also second-party audits. So if you're still looking around, give us a call, write us, but we will be very glad to be one of your options for the certification body. And this basically takes us to the end of the presentation. Let's see if there's any comment or questions from the participant.
Okay, yeah, I've just added thanks for that, Alfonso. If you can switch your webcam back on. I've just added a little poll in the sidebar just for interest on the fly, just to see of our audience how they are, whether they're already certified to a GFSI benchmark standard, not at all working towards or don't need it. So yeah, a good proportion are already certified. Can you see that poll in the sidebar, Alfonso?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, so roughly 50% already certified. 20 no, so not even on the road yet. 20% working towards, and 11% don't need it. That was just a bit of interest there, just to see the demographic of the audience. Right, yeah, thanks very much. A good overview that, and anybody who is being asked to achieve GFSI or wants to be proactive and to develop business and keep business, and it was a great overview. So let's have a look what we've got in the questions. Right, let's have a look. I'm just grabbing a quick one there. Narongachai, after Brexit, will BRC be less popular in the EU than IFS and FSSC? I mean, I'm from this neck of the woods, and I don't think BRC was hugely popular. I might be wrong. IFS is much more popular in Germany and France and countries like that. Okay, Andrew Dalglish. Okay, can you see that question there? Many sites in the EU have both BRC and IFS certificates. Some also have FSSC as a third certificate. This is mostly due to retailer requirements as to what schemes they accept. Oh, it's not a question. I think somebody did ask before. It was a slogan of GFSI: once certified, recognized everywhere. And I think that was the whole idea of GFSI originally. Is that right, Alfonso?
Yeah, that is correct. I think that I'm very glad to say that in North America, this is something that don't happen that frequent. It's very unlikely to see companies that certify with multiple standards. But the reality is that in Europe, yes, it's so polarized that the retailer asks you for specific things. Now, if I compare the requirements of BRC and IFS, I don't see anything that I may tell you that they have better trust one or the other. If at the end the auditor is qualified for both, I mean, they should be accepted. But still, there is a lot of cultural and regional requirements that there's not too much that we can do. We could continue pushing the GFSI, but there's not too much that we can do as a certification body.
Yeah, okay. Let's have a look. It's sort of a discussion in the sidebar more than a question about multiple certifications. Right, Amit, is saying that it's important that any GFSI standard should be benchmarked to the most recent GFSI guidance document, but some standards are still benchmarked under 7.1 rather than the latest 7.2. Is that just a transition? Is it just the cycle of updating?
It's a transition, but at the very end, I mean, I don't see that the standard may not be accepted worldwide if they are being benchmarked against 7.1 and 7.2. It's a matter of time. So at the end, sooner or later, they will be accepted. And I have not seen any retailer that may say, no, I don't accept this one because it has not been completed a transition. It's a timing issue.
Okay. Gerardo is saying, hi, I'm from Monterrey, Mexico. Which one should I choose if my company is an industrial bakery, baked bread and fried donuts?
Well, in this case, if it's in Monterrey, Mexico, there may be multiple considerations. If they are industrial, I don't know if they are exporting to the US. So then after, it's very likely to know it's not only Mexico requirement, but also what their main customers and retailer may require them to do in the US. If it's only Mexican market, what they are having, the availability of the auditors in Monterrey, that could be one of the topics. So if they choose, for example, IFS food, I can tell you that there is no certification body with auditors in Mexico for bakeries. But you may be able to find qualified auditors in BRC, in FSSC, and in SQF.
Okay, so that's a factor. Gary, curious, did I hear you correctly that SQF does not offer food packaging certification? We have an SQF food packaging cert.
No, the one that I show in the slide is that SQF do not have at this moment approval for brokers. And that was one of the things that they used to have, but they decided to step away. So what I explained that the three main standards, or the four main standards, they cover most of the requirements on food packaging and distribution. It was IFS, BRC, SQF, and FSSC. So there may be a misunderstanding. SQF has a food packaging, and we certify a lot of companies with SQF packaging.
Okay. Ada, how can I convince my customers that having one GFSI certification is enough and avoid multiple certs, since I understand that's one of the goals? So how would you go about convincing the customers?
Well, I don't know where is AIDA located, but I will give you some of the things that I have been able to find out. Most of the companies have a position that the one that negotiates the standard is the sales team. So sales is the one that do not want to make angry their customers, and based on that, they just basically go with the flow. So they may go back to production and they say, well, they have a new customer and they want us to be BRC, and now you have to complete with that standard. But I have certain customers that they had been in a very strong position on, hey, we certify with this standard, and this will be the one that we will provide to everybody. We may be able to compare and demonstrate that our standard fulfill the requirements of the other ones. But at a certain moment, I believe that there must be like a very strong position of the company, including sales, to explain to your customer what is your position. Otherwise, you're basically accepting everything that your customer requests, and that may be a very difficult and a risky situation.
Okay. Yeah, it's about education and then being firm, I guess. Okay, Juan. Hi, my company is from Colombia. We produced organic panela. We are certificated with EU organic standards. Any recommendation of certification, IFS, FSSC, or BRC?
Well, as I explained it, Juan Jose, the certification body will not be able to give you a recommendation of the standards. But if you are in Colombia, but you are exporting to Europe, that's something that you may need to work with your customer to understand what are the standards that they may ask you to. But the same fact is, if you, for example, you may like IFS when you read it, but you find out that there are not enough available auditors in where you live, then naturally it's possible that the availability of resources may be the selection for you, unless you want to fly somebody from Brazil or from Mexico or the US to perform the audit. So maybe for you, the availability of qualified auditors could be one of the criteria.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is a comment from Hanu, but I don't understand it. Maybe you do. What's lacuna makes ISO out of GFSI? Does that make any sense to you?
No.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, maybe just to understand that an ISO standard was not benchmarked by itself. FSSC actually, they use the ISO 22000 as an element to demonstrate compliance with the GFSI requirements. So FSSC is not the owner of the ISO standard. They are only the ones that use it as a means to demonstrate compliance. You know what? There is a question at the top from Mahumed Hassan Shaksev. And what they are saying is the company are still asking them to do an AIB GMP standard audit. And that is something that I may be able to answer based on what I get from the standards. So this is very interesting, and this is something that may be a discussion for another session in the future. FSSC, GFSI standards, they have a requirement to evaluate compliance with management system requirements, prerequisites, and HACCP. But the reality is that most of the companies starting to focus more on the management system requirements and less in the prerequisite requirements. So we are getting more and more requests from companies that say, hey, I am a GFSI certified company, but we're starting to struggle heavily with the level of implementation of our GMP programs. So what happened is AIB, GMP are basically focused on prerequisite programs. So they do a deep analysis on how your program and system is implementing on those specific ones. GFSI is much more holistic, global. But I can be seeing that companies are, in some cases, going to the GFSI, believe that the GMP are not relevant, and when they're not doing a proper job, 1 or 2 years come back and say, well, we struggle, we are GFSI, but we struggle with prerequisites. We need somebody else that helps us to develop that part that we believe that we are not doing a proper job with the time. So that's why some cases companies may still asking you to have evidence of a proper GMP program implemented.
Okay, I think this is just a repeat question, but just a different country and a different product. I think the answer is the same. This is from Canned Care. My company produced flour, noodles, pasta, crackers in Bangladesh, local market. What should be better for next certification? FSSC, Food Safety Management System.
Okay, if I understand properly, FSMS is the new version of it's like the Japanese management system certification. So if your market is local, I will say that FSSC will be your better option than looking for a Japanese standard. And also the availability of the auditors is going to be one of the main topics.
Yeah, as you've said before, what do your customers want? What's available, auditors in your local market? That's a big choice. And then stand firm and just implement the standard very well. Right, I think that's it. We've gone over the hour mark. Yeah, I appreciate you being here today, Alfonso. Good feedback from the audience. Thank you very much for everybody. Yeah, hope to have you on one again in the near future. Happy holidays. Enjoy your break, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays.
Okay, ladies and gents, I will load your certificate in the sidebar, certificate of attendance for today. You just click on the download now button, and that will take you to Dropbox. Print off your certificate and sign it yourself, or edit it in an image editing package and type your name. Yeah, it's the last Food Safety Friday of 2018. Happy holidays. For those of you who are getting a break now, enjoy your break and come back in the new year. If you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. I do. I'll be putting on my Santa outfit later. Happy Friday. I'll see you in 2019. Take care, everyone. Cheers. Bye.